Hey guys, it's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the T95 Max Plus Android TV box. Now I've recently done a few videos on this, but I wasn't focusing on Android. I actually showed you guys how to flash an SD card and run Emulation on this specific box here, but since then I've had a lot of people ask me to just do a review on the box like it sits with Android on it, so I figured I'd go ahead and do it. Now this box actually goes for $42 on eBay right now for the 32GB model, or $47 with 64GB of internal storage, but both of them do have a micro SD card slot, so we can expand this very easily. So let's go ahead and get right down to it. We're going to do a quick unboxing, we'll go over the specs, and then we'll start the testing. So obviously inside of the packaging, you're going to receive the Android box itself. This is known as the T95 Max Plus. I have the 32GB model here, but they also make a 64. It's very plain, as you can see, it's just a basic Android box, but we do have all of the inputs and outputs we need for a box like this. Next up, you're also going to receive a simple IR remote. There is no voice functionality with this remote, but it has all the buttons we need, and it also acts as an air mouse just in case you need to use it for certain apps. And these do not come with batteries, but it only uses 2 AAAs. You're also going to get your power supply. I believe this is 5 volt 2 amp. It's just a little barrel jack on the end. Yeah, 5 volt 2 amp. Nothing special here. A small HDMI cable and a user manual. It's in Chinese, Spanish, and English. So as for I/O on the box, we have one USB 3.0 port, one USB 2.0 port, and a micro SD card slot. Now I've personally only tested up to a 128GB card, but it works fine. Around back, we have our 3.5mm audio jack, Gigabit Ethernet, full-size HDMI, and our power input. Not much going on around the bottom here, but we do have some rubber feet to kind of keep it in place. And this does feature an LCD display on the front of the box. It'll give you the time, whether you're connected over Wi-Fi, Ethernet, and if you have USB connected. It's definitely kind of gimmicky, but I've been seeing this a lot on these Android devices. Overall, I've actually been having a really nice time with this little Android box. It's been a while since I found one of these cheaper boxes that I personally enjoy using. Now, if you have the money and you need an Android TV or a media player, I would highly recommend getting the Nvidia Shield Android TV. But at $41, this is not a bad buy here, especially since we also have the option to run Emulation from an SD card. And if you're not familiar with Emulation, it's basically RetroPie running from the SD card on this Android TV box, and it works fine on this device. I'll leave some links in the description to the videos I created showing you how to get that up and running. But as specs go, for the CPU, we have the Amlogic S905x3. This is a quad-core CPU, Cortex A55 at 1.9 GHz. The GPU is the MaliG31 MP2, 4GB of LPDDR3 RAM, and I was really surprised to find out that this really does have 4GB installed. Some of these Android boxes that I've seen recently advertise 4, but they only have 2 pre-installed, so that's a big plus. The version I have here has 32GB of internal storage, but you can get the 64GB model. We can also use USB devices for storage, and it does support a micro SD card. 802.11bg and an AC Wi-Fi, so we can pick up that 5 GHz network. We also have Gigabit Ethernet and Bluetooth 4.0. And the box is running Android 9.0. This is the non-Android TV version, which I prefer on a little box like this because we have access to the full Google Play Store and not just the TV store. So in this video, I'm just going to give you a look at this box. We're going to test out some 4K video streaming, native playback, native Android gaming, some emulation, and even game streaming from Geforce Now and xCloud. Alright, so here we are at the main interface. I mean, it's pretty plain Jane. I did plug in a keyboard just to make it a little easier to access everything. Over on the right hand side, we can add certain apps. We'll just do Stardew Valley over here. We have all of our apps here. It does have access to the Google Play Store. Home will bring us right back there. And we also have our settings icon down here, which will bring us to our settings menu. So we have Droid TV settings, and basically, when I get these boxes, I really don't want them running Android TV, and luckily, this one here is not. We're running Android 9.0. Overall, it's been pretty snappy. Now, some high-end 3D games just aren't going to work well on a low-end box like this, but I've had really good luck even with streaming from Geforce Now and xCloud on this little Android TV. So first things first, a lot of people buy these for video playback, and while streaming works great on this, you're not going to get the high-end like Netflix app with 4K built in, or the high-end Amazon app with 4K. If you want to stream from YouTube, even 4K works really well on this little box. I'm actually pretty surprised at how good this does work. But keep in mind, the YouTube app itself is only running at 1080p, so our viewpoint is 1080p, but we can switch over to 4K for the video, and it works quite well on this little box. I have stats for nerds on, and as you can see, our viewpoint is set at 1080p because that's what the app's running at, but we do have the video itself running at 4K. We have 0 drop frames out of close to 2,000, which is pretty good because most of these boxes that I test have about 100 to 500 drop frames by now. So overall, it definitely handles streaming 4K video, but like I mentioned, the app itself is only running at 1080p, and this is about the only 4K streaming app you're going to be able to get, because even Netflix, Hulu, or Amazon Prime's not going to do 4K because the licensing's not there for this box itself. So we've got YouTube out of the way, it works great, but what about native video playback? Now I've tested all the apps that are pre-installed here, and I find Movie Player is the best one to use. I'm running these movies from an external USB 3.0 2TB drive, and we'll test out 1080p, 60 FPS. This is an MP4. No problem with 1080p. This box is going to handle pretty much any 1080p format perfectly fine. Super smooth coming down here. And the sound's dead on. Let's take it up to 4K 30. Same video, just 4K 30 FPS. Again, handling it just fine. So 1080p 60, 4K 30, and now we're going to try 4K 60, which these boxes really struggle with. No matter what app I try to play this with, I'm getting very, very slow frame rates here, and you'll be able to see it. It's just even choppy right at the beginning. And the sound is way off. I've always had issues like this with these lower-end Android boxes. So what about native Android gaming? Well, like I mentioned at the beginning, higher end 3D games just aren't going to work well on here. PUBG, Call of Duty Mobile, it's just too underpowered. But it does run the native Android lower end games really well. Here's Stardew Valley here. Perfectly playable either with a controller, mouse, or you could even use the remote that's included if you want to, but I would recommend getting some type of Bluetooth controller for most games. Next up, GTA San Andreas. Working great here. I haven't messed around with any of the settings in the menu. I'm sure we could jack this up a little bit because it's running fine like it sits. Overall, the Rockstar games are going to run fine on here. Vice City, Bully, and as you can see here, San Andreas. So we do have that going for us. And by the way, I'm using an Xbox One controller connected over Bluetooth. I also wanted to test out King of Fighters All-Stars. Unfortunately, it's just not great performance. I do have the resolution and the settings all the way down here. Now, even though I showed off some emulation using Emulation on this box, I figured I'd go ahead and test some more here. We're using MovePin 64 plus FZ from the Google Play Store. I got Diddy Kong Racing going here, and it works fine. Even Super Smash Bros. Ran great on here, but there's one I always like to test, and that's 007 GoldenEye. Unfortunately, it's not the best performance, but in my opinion, this is working better than the Raspberry Pi 3 did. PlayStation 1 is going to be no issue at all with this system. I'm using RetroArch with the PC SX rearmed core. This is Bloody Roar 2 running at a constant 60 FPS. Because I already had RetroArch loaded up, I figured I'd test out a CPS 3 game. Again, perfect performance, 60 FPS using the Final Burn Neo core. But I gotta say, one of my favorite parts about this box is the support for xCloud streaming and even Geforce Now. I'm gonna go ahead and start up Forza Horizon 4, and it works great over Ethernet. Now it'll work over Wi-Fi, but when I'm streaming games from Geforce Now or even xCloud, I always want to plug into Ethernet just to get the best performance. Since we're here, I'll go ahead and start up Geforce Now, and I'll just run Far Cry 5. Now this is streaming from their servers. So overall, I really do think this box is worth $42. The 32GB model is going to be plenty for what you need to do with Android. Plus, we have the ability to run a whole other operating system from an SD card on this little box. So yeah, I really do think it's worth the money. If you're interested in picking one of these up, I will leave links in the description. You can pick it up on eBay for $42. It's actually $41.58. And Amazon also has them, but they're out of stock of the 32 gigs, so they only have the 64 for $50. By no means at all am I suggesting that this is a high-end Android device. I completely understand that we're working with low-end specs here, but the price does reflect that, and it's not going to beat the Nvidia Shield Android TV, but the Shield TV is $130 to $200 depending on what model you pick up, so it's really hard to even compare the two because of the massive price difference. But yeah, the Nvidia Shield will beat this every single day in every single test, but I think at the $40 price tag, this is a decent little Android TV box. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I really appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I'm also leaving a few links so you can install Emulation on a device like this. But like always, thanks for watching.